Okay, now,
Do you want to take us out of practice session, Amanda? Because I don't have that ability.
Here we go. Okay, the webinar has started.
all right, so the second budget working session. I would not propose that we go through each of these lines again. We already did. There were a handful of things that were left over. On the last call, we went through every line and we made changes to every line. Well, we didn't make changes to every line. Where we did make changes, Nick actually put them in real time and you could see it. He then promptly sent it out so everybody could check to see whether it reflected what they recalled. But since he did it while we were on the call, it was pretty straightforward. I would prefer instead to talk about the few, I've got 8 or 9 things that were still potentially open, and then see where we are, if that works. And a few people had homework items, you know, they had to do. So I'm going to start with, one of them was the Zoom cost increase. And I think there's a budget line item, it's in there. Yeah, $900. We've got $900 in again, and there was some question about that. Do we know any more about this number?
I don't have a Zoom contact. It increased 2 years ago with Zooms, but we will negotiate it down. I think we should budget this amount. I did the similar negotiation with my firm, and we didn't win. I think a town this small, we should be able to do something. Try to get it down to the 450, but I need more time.
Okay, so we'll leave the 900 in the budget and you'll continue to pursue it.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. John Marshall Bank CDs. Do we know anything more about that?
Yeah, so I talked to Diane, who's our rep, and then the CFO. I'm gonna mess up his name, but I'll have it in a second. So our current CDs, they did roll into another one, but they're up maturity in August 2023. I didn't stop there. I said, okay, well, what's the termination for 350 grand sitting there? It's only $500 per CD, which is a total of $1,500 to terminate early. They're sitting at a 1% right now, and he promptly offered me 4.5%. So I'm going to speak with him tomorrow. If you're doing quick math on that amount of money, we would get back our termination fee within a half a month, so 1 month. So it's a no-brainer. Tomorrow I'll speak with them. As far as my ability to move the funds, because the signers on that account is not me. I'm filling out the paperwork. If we want to move pretty quick here, because the feds are they're on schedule to release another Fed rate, and this might be the first time that they don't hike at the end of the month. So we kind of want to move a little quick. I'm going to speak with him tomorrow. I'll ask him if moving me to a signer and getting this done all on my desk is smart and timeline plausible. Otherwise, I'll get all the paperwork and I'll meet you guys down in Clifton for some signature parties. But ultimately, we'll go to 4.5% for.
All right, and who needs to sign? Me and who?
It's going to probably just be one signer. It's probably going to be you.
All right, let's get it done.
We'll do.
And if you can do it, that's fine. If not, let's find a time and let's get it done. It's important.
Absolutely.
4.5 becomes material.
Oh yeah, it's about 11K a month sitting on that money. So going back to where we left things, where's our interest? Hold on one moment.
And how much is there? 300 and what?
It's about 350 sitting in 3 different CDs.
Okay.
And I'm gonna split it up as we discussed previously, hopefully for 2 different CDs at 4.5%. So we have a little bit of flexibility should we want to get some cash out.
Okay.
We budgeted 45K for the year.
Mhm.
That comes out, that's way too low. That comes out to about $37.50 a month. Knowing that we're going to move these funds in there, we will be looking at 132K just from,
No,
nope, hold on, bad math.
15,750 less the
Correct.
1,500. So
The 13 a month. Yep, 13 a month.
certainly a delta of 10.
So it's 15K extra on top of that. And then I'll do the quick math while we go on to the next item and I'll propose what
I
number we
would,
should change to.
if people are comfortable, I'd put another 10,000 in
Okay.
there. Instead of 45, make it 55. Are people okay with that?
Yep. Looks
All
good.
right.
There you go.
Okay.
Great.
All right, very good. Thanks for running that down. Let's get it.
Yeah.
it signed.
That's a nice little pick me up.
It's
Yeah.
good.
Did anyone find out about the FDIC rules?
I did not, but I think my understanding is it's $250,000, right? 250,000 per account. We're over those numbers. I have no idea how it applies to local governments though.
Yeah. We need to find out. It's a prudent thing to do.
Yeah, even if we gotta, split them up into smaller CDs just so that the account sizes are lower.
Insured up to
than the threshold.
250K, like you said. I will research that and I will speak with Kent and then our banker with William as well to make sure. But 250K is the threshold.
That shouldn't necessarily impact the overall budget. It's just about how the money is split up, right?
It's not a budget item. It's a fiscal prudence issue.
Right.
Yes.
I don't want this homework assignment to hold up approving a budget tonight if we can.
No, it does not. VML annual membership. My recollection was there wasn't even a line item, and making me concerned that we somehow didn't pay our membership.
We did talk about this. I don't. There's 2 different lines now, right? One for the insurance and one for the membership.
I don't know.
Yeah, I remember discussing it last week.
Yeah, so
remember-
I searched the history of emails and then the last time it was renewed. There is not a contact I find. If anybody has any contact, that'd be great. I went to the website. I did quite a few different things, try to get a contact. There's a generic. I'm going to send an email there. But ultimately, we want to renew our membership. Good news is, from the history when I went through, it looks like there's a history of renewing at all different times during the year. So I don't think it's going to be too problematic. But as we discussed last time, we want to get it done as soon as possible. And hopefully I can add the bank card just so it's renewing by itself. So it's not a problematic thing every year.
What
And,
cost wise?
yeah, any idea?
Yeah, let me pull up the previous one. Not much. It was $428 for the last membership renewal. The previous year of that was 408. It was 408 for 3 years and went up $20. So we can expect it to be probably 450.
Okay. Local government. If your locality is a full dues paying VML member. Okay.
Yeah, they don't really have a link to just pay them.
If you are a member if you are in a member category from a locality with population of 2,500 or less, your dues are 185. So it's unclear. We don't want to overpay either.
We are listed on their
Member.
as a member.
As a
yeah.
member, yeah. I thought that was
Honorary.
all.
Although the link there links to our old .com address, so we should definitely get that updated.
Okay.
It may also be that the dues have been split between the insurance and the dues to the organization, and that's why the numbers are different now.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the email, when you click contact them, it goes to email@vml.org. I did send an email to them 1 week ago with no response. I'm gonna try to find a phone number.
I'm gonna send you a link to the league staff page. I'm guarantee you that there's a person here for that manages membership.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll drop it in the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat's not on. Never mind. I'll text it to you.
Perfect.
Okay, so can we put in a line item for that?
Yeah, I'm trying to
And-
remember where the subcategory is. Hold on.
Me too. You'd think it'd be near insurance, but I don't know.
Oh, I know how I can check quickly. Check. Dues and subscriptions. Okay, there it is. We had $500 budgeted
Where is it? Which,
Dues and subscriptions,
right here.
there
142.
it is. Okay. Oh, it's
143.
called VA Municipal League. Okay, great. $500. All right, let's get that taken care of, but it's in the budget. Okay.
Sent.
Thank you.
We had an item for banner replacement that Reagan was going to look at. It's currently in the budget at 0, awaiting perhaps a number. And I don't know if Reagan has more information on that.
Yeah, it looks like the banners are about a couple $100 a piece. We have 4 brand new ones that we haven't put up yet. So I think if we put maybe $2,000 in this, we would have more than enough to refresh everything. We could probably even go 1,500. I've been in contact with the folks that produced them. They still have the artwork, so it would just be reproducing them.
It might be a good idea to get some made. Whatever the number is, it should be an even number, right? If it's 200 each.
Yeah, it's like
1,500 gets you
it's like
7.5.
212 and change or whatever. But if we put 2,000 in the budget, we would be in good shape for this year.
I put 2,000 in, please.
Okay, yeah, it looks like last time banners were purchased 2020. They ran about 245, 275, and 475 and 450. So 2,000 should do it right.
Okay.
And these have
Um,
lasted. We put these up in 2017. I went back to all the old orders. So these have they're all faded, but they've done pretty well. So we've got 6 or 7 years out of them.
Okay, go down to the capital items, please. Capital items. We have 8-acre park entrance improvements, and we have $5,000 there. I just want to talk about what's going on. Recall Chuck has raised concerns, and I received another email I forwarded to everyone about cars parking there. So the idea would be that we would put a restriction at the end of Chapel Street, provided that Chuck's on board with it, which he should be. Steve talked about the possibility of removable bollards, where you slide them out of the ground or something, versus a gate so people can walk through. But something like that, where we would close off at the end of Chapel Street to vehicles going further and parking or driving down there. And we've got this $5,000 for 8-acre park entrance improvements. Do we think that's a sufficient amount to cover a gate or bollards or something? Reagan, Steve, others, do you have any thought on that?
Yeah, I would think that's enough. Even if we put pipes in the ground, painted them yellow or whatever, just to keep people from parking there.
Yeah.
Pedestrians could pass through easily, and we'll just keep them on our right of way so that the pump and haul trucks can go through the gate and make their swing and to back in. That should be sufficient, I would think.
And they'd be something we could pull out when we have events would be the idea.
To give you some idea, removable bollards, safety bollards run anywhere from $140 to $400, depending on how heavy duty you want. If you want to
Okay.
stop a truck, you get the $400 one. And so we could put a couple in. I noticed that there is another line item for signs, and I think we would have to put signs up down there also saying that this is a tow-away zone.
Agreed. Okay, so do you think the 5,000 covers what we need to do down there, including signs?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
And we probably have one at the edges and two in the middle or something
Yeah.
like that. And then the ability to remove the two in the middle when needed, or if needed by the Layfields or Chuck. All right. Next, we have an item called Clifton Creek Park Trails. $10,000. I want to talk about that. And people had said, what is that for? And we talked about, improving the surface of the trails. But as I was thinking about it today, going through this, we have this big item we have to address, which is removal of the invasive plants there, which will be perhaps a multi-year effort, but it'll be expensive, a lot of work there. And that, I think, is the Clifton Creek Park improvement that we're talking about. I don't know that $10,000 is enough for that effort to get done, but thoughts on that? So that's the idea of that. It's not so much the trails as the overgrown invasive species around the trails. And maybe Nick, you could put in something there, trails and invasive species.
We've spoken previously about going one section at a time. Do we have an idea about, just like this, the cost per, quarter of an acre, or is that the way that it's priced out? Or have we even seen any sort of pricing on it?
Well, we've gotten proposals in the past anywhere from maybe $20,000 to $80,000
For the whole
to
thing?
do where the work was, we'll come in and work until we're tired and then go home. And we'll complete as much as we complete. So instead, we have spoken to Tom Stokes, who's done a lot of work for the town, including the 8-acre park entrance and the Harris Park extension. And I've walked the property with him many times. He has a plan in his mind. I've asked him to put it into writing, but I haven't gotten it yet. So I don't know what the cost is, but
Can we add Laura to the meeting? She's in the lobby or waiting area.
Amanda, can you promote her? Because I don't have that ability.
We met with Tommy down there, so.
Oh, great.
Here we go.
Thank you. Yeah, Reagan and I met with Tom, and after meeting with him, I'm hesitant to move forward we talked about a proposal, and that's because he wants to clear cut everything and make it look like a golf course. I've also talked to IPC, who is the company that the county works with that manages all of the native areas. And they are more reasonable. They charge about $16.50 a day for 2 people. And we would agree on an area to be a demonstration area. We would agree on a size, like an acre, half acre, quarter acre, whatever. And it would have to be done over a period of 3 to 5 years.
Back to the same.
I'll be meeting with them in June. Their rep manager is on maternity leave right now.
Back to the same question, because I've heard this from a bunch of people who've looked at this. They say we'll do it at X dollars, but we won't tell you how much we'll do.
Yeah, that's not the conversation that I had with them at all. I explained the situation
Okay.
and the fact that the property has, a number of different owners, and that we wanted a managed effort that will be done properly and at the right time of year, instead of having people go back in, volunteers go in 2 or 3 times, making the situation worse, and then trying to find somebody that has a certified applicator's license, to go in and cut anything or treat anything that's been cut.
Okay, so how large would be the area that they would do each day?
That is something that we will have to discuss in June when we're on the ground. And I guess we need to have an understanding that, we want this much done. I say, I'm just going to throw out a number, a quarter acre. I don't know if that's reasonable.
I don't either. The whole property is what, 8 acres? And
I actually think that side is more.
10 acres, 15 acres?
Yeah, I thought it was more like 10 or 11, but I'd have to
Okay.
check the map.
Okay, and I don't know how much we do, call it 5 acres, a quarter acre at a time would take us 20 years. So that's what I'm talking about a plan, which I've never really gotten a plan from anybody about.
Right. They'll come up with a plan. They will construct a plan for you. I mean, the last meeting that we had with the Conservation Trust, they were supposed to come up with a plan.
Yeah, I'm not waiting.
And we've never seen anything. So
Yes.
and I have asked them on several occasions if they would provide something, and they have not.
Right. So I think it's if it's gonna happen, it'll be us doing it.
Right.
And so I like the idea of a demonstration area. The question is what area and how much? And
Yeah.
right now we don't know either of those.
Right. And I would rely on their expertise to tell us the best place to start.
In terms of what we're earmarking in the budget,
Yes, correct.
The
That's
other
the
thing,
question.
the other thing that I wanted to let you all know is that some neighbors have approached me, and they would be willing to make sizable donations to the effort
great to hear.
to see this happen.
All right. So Daryl correctly brings us back to the point of this entire discussion, which is to put money in the budget, the
Right.
capital budget here, since we have no idea how much we're talking about for the coming year. Okay, this is July 1 to June 30, which may cover 2 different efforts, perhaps. I don't know when they do it, but you're gonna have summer, fall, winter, spring, early summer. Okay,
Right.
so 12 months.
Yeah,
What-
the best time to tackle the multiflora rose, which is one of the species of concern down there, is in the fall and winter. And same thing with the lesser celandine that I mentioned to you all. You want to do that when it comes up and before it blooms.
So currently, we have $10,000. The question is that too much, too little? What we don't want is to come up with this plan
And
and
not
we don't have enough.
right.
But right now I have absolutely no idea other than it's $16.50 a day.
Correct.
But I don't know.
How many
Is it
days?
10 days, which is 16,000,
Right.
or I just don't know.
100 days? What, you know, like.
Well, it wouldn't take them 100 days. I mean, they can have a crew anywhere from 2 to, you know, I think what they said, 6 people come in and do it. So
Well, would 6 people be 5,000 a day?
yeah, that's how they do.
So
That's how they
1650 is for 2 people a day for
Correct.
2 people. Okay.
correct.
So $8.25 a person per day. But they start with 2 people.
Correct.
Like $100 an hour.
Okay.
Which
So-
honestly is a bargain.
That sounds
For that kind of
phenomenal.
work.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that sounds completely reasonable, but I like the idea of having a fixed cost and defined deliverables. So
Yes.
we're not gonna have that until we get to June, it sounds like. So for now, I would say let's put it back to $20,000 and see where we shake out.
I agree. What was driving us to drop it to 10 in the last discussion?
Because we were talking about something completely different. We're talking
Yeah.
about what it said, Clifton Creek Park Trails. But I was thinking to myself, the real effort's the invasive species, not the trails themselves. Hence this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't be keen on spending more than that if it's gonna be a 5-year effort. So.
Well, they have to come back and retreat. So, you know, they come in year 1 with the plan and cut and treat, and then some things come back. And so they have to, so that the effort is less every year, if that helps you.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? We're not planning on clear cutting the whole park, are we?
No.
Right.
No, that's what we want to avoid that, it sounds like.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought. So
We
there's
just
gonna
want to,
be,
we just want to manage the invasive species.
yeah, but as you know, on that one side of the trail, that's most of what's there.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge effort and let me say it again. We're not going to remove all the invasive species at one time this fall, winter, are we?
No.
Okay. So it'll be a multi-year effort at whatever this high number is. It's going to be a
Correct.
big job. And what I'm trying to get, and Daryl's saying the same thing, is that an actual plan of what's going to be done and where and at what price. That isn't, we'll do it and we'll send you the bill and it'll be whatever it costs.
Right. Oh, no.
Yeah.
And I know that they've already brokered with Phoebe to do some work down there as well. So that I think they'll be taking that on later this year as well.
And we're talking about June of this year, right? Not June of next year.
Correct.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, I think you got the wrong year in that note. Just FYI.
We'll know in
We'll know in a
14
year and a
months.
half.
14 months, everybody.
Yeah, June 23 for an effort to be fall, winter 23-24.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
i.e. this coming budget year.
This fiscal. Okay. That seems,
All right.
I don't know, that seems like the most reasonable way to proceed is to just leave that in there as it is.
And there also may be a way to partner with the Conservation Trust to get them to do some grant writing.
Great.
I assume that there's money out there, you know, and they should pony up too.
Yeah, and if we can, you mentioned there's some folks that are willing to donate to the effort that we can
Correct.
offset some of this on the revenue side of the budget.
Yep.
But with that being uncertain, I think this number is where we should leave it.
Based on all my discussions with NVCT, they're not willing to put any actual money in. They're expecting the town to put all the money in, but they are willing to ask other people to give them money.
Correct.
So if we have a plan, then they might have something they could go out and
Yeah.
seek grants on.
Right, clearly defined cost and deliverables that
Yeah.
will help us get lots of people. It sounds like, if there are neighbors waiting to write checks, I feel like we point them to a plan and they write a check. Sounds good.
And just, we're going to manage this, but this whole effort could be 100 grand, and it wouldn't surprise me. For all the
Can I
work
ask-
that we're doing
But
in
that's
there.
over a 5-year, 10-year period,
It's
right?
It's over 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Steve, did you have
Yeah,
something to add?
I know that there's a great deal of interest in this. And I'm certainly not gonna take it on as a battle, but I'm curious, and I want to ask a stupid question. If whatever is growing there and is growing prolifically were not described as invasive, would there be a movement to take it all out? Or would there be a movement simply to control it so that it was not running over the walking areas? I mean, somebody has declared that this is invasive, and therefore somehow we have decided we have to eliminate it all. But if it were not invasive, it was just a grown-in area, would we be considering spending $100,000 on getting rid of it all?
And I don't know if Laura wants to address this, but I'll start.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Bill.
The issue, Steve, do you ever walk down there?
Yeah.
Okay. The issue there is it's out of control.
I understand that.
What we're really talking about is managing the property by, in effect, cleaning it out and putting the right stuff in. Okay. So even if this were lovely native, it's still too overwhelming and too overgrown, and it needs to be managed.
Yeah, I'm just asking the question of, if we didn't have this magic word of invasive species, you could manage something and cut it back without spending $100,000 over a period of time to get rid of it all.
Yeah, yes and no. This stuff is like an impenetrable, thorn-filled, nasty thing. So it kind of makes wherever it grows becomes impassable, at least to humans. So even if this were native, it would be undesirable as a thing. Now, that's why we've been talking about, we don't want to clear cut it. We want to remove it selectively and replace it. You don't want no understudy here for birds and stuff to go to. So it's really about cutting this stuff back. And why the high price? Because this stuff is like going through barbed wire. And it just takes a huge amount of effort to do two things. Number one, cut it back. And number two, keep it from coming back, because it, as you noted, it grows really, really well. So what we found with, we've had 6-7 different people look at it. The cost is eye-opening when you talk about getting rid of this multiflora rose stuff. And to do it in a way that doesn't perhaps damage the environment is surprisingly expensive. That was my take. And once we get it back, then we can manage the property. And it's just, in my view, it's out of control the way it is. Now, if we didn't have any money, this would not be my highest priority. We got to keep the lights on, mow the grass, whatever. Okay. But we have been fortunate enough to collect funds for things like this, where we can take what's a highly desirable open space property and make it more usable, more accessible. So it's taking something we have and making it better for the community. That's my takeaway. Laura, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, well, one of the thoughts about tackling this, looking ahead, is we can get certain designations, and again, that could possibly mean more money in grants, like as a Tree City USA. You can apply, different towns can apply for these designations, and you have to demonstrate through efforts, that you've done X, Y, and Z to achieve this certification. It's, and there's I could keep us here until 10 o'clock tonight, which I know you guys don't want to do again this
Sounds
week.
fun.
Yeah, no, I think Bill summed it up. It's the right thing to do. It's for water quality. One of the questions I had, I don't know if anybody has lived here and was here in 1972, but I'd be really curious. Okay, so Steve, you're the person to ask. Where was the high water mark from Hurricane Agnes?
I have no idea. Look, I'm not going to fight this because this
Yeah.
is not my issue, and I understand there are a lot of people who think it is important. That's fine. I just look at this and say, if I were to ask the citizens of Clifton whether they would prefer to get some sidewalks paid for by the town in town, so that they could safely walk on the streets to the post office, as opposed to clearing out invasive species, I'm pretty sure I know what they'd say.
The other thing is you'll have another opportunity, and we all will, to address this, because we still don't have any defined work scope or any defined price. So this
Yeah.
is really, we're not approving anything, and I absolutely am not, because as much as I've heard talk from many people, I've never seen anybody actually write something down with a defined scope. And maybe that's because they're afraid of it too. But for us to be serious about this, we have to actually know exactly what somebody's going to do and what the price is. And if they get in there and they go, oh, it's more than I thought, I'll go, not my problem, man. You said you would do it at this price. And we would do a demonstration scope, which is good for us and good for them, so they'll know what they've gotten themselves into. We'll get that done, and then we'll all go look at it. And when people go, what are you doing with the money? We go, we're doing this. And they'll go, that's ridiculous. That's a waste of money. You shouldn't use your money for that. Or they'll go, oh, this is awesome, but I don't know. I believe that's how we're actually going to go. That's my intent.
Yeah.
Not we're going to approve some gigantic contract and whatever, but rather we'll demonstrate it. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how difficult it is. We'll see what it looks like, and go from there. But we wanted to at least have a vision for what we would do overall, because that's part of it as well. So
Yeah,
that's,
and I think it's also worth noting that there are some potential revenue side items to offset what we're spending here, and I haven't heard the same enthusiasm on the sidewalks, although I'm willing to earmark funds in the budget to improve the sidewalks as well if somebody has a proposal.
okay, so we'll put $20,000 in the budget for this, but it's not being spent. No one's agreed to
Right.
spend it. No one's agreed to spend a single dollar. We're waiting for an actual proposal and plan, and we're being clear that it has to have a defined scope and a defined cost, that we can all look at before we green light anything, and we expect it will be an incremental effort, and we'll see as we go. Okay. Along those lines, Steve, there's been an item in here for a long time, engineering and design for new sidewalk. You may remember that. We zeroed it out at the last meeting, but I hear you thinking maybe you might want either what was in there back or something else in there in case
No.
it comes up.
No, I would leave it at zero at the moment. Until we straighten out what's going on with streetscape, it's silly to start talking about other stuff. And we have to find out what the easements are required and what the VDOT requires. And we clearly don't know those things.
All right,
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you fair opportunity there, that we didn't take something away and you would be surprised.
Oh, no.
Okay. Another item that's not in here that I'd like to propose as a cap item and maybe not, it depends on the group, which is there's been talk here at the council and around town about a trail that would run from the town to Hemlock Overlook. And it would run, and there used to be one informally. It would run through the 8-acre park. It would run through the creek. It would run behind at the back of Layfield's property and on the edge of the adjoining properties, right at the edge where their property abuts the Norfolk Southern property, on the south side of the creek, and ultimately run over to Hemlock Overlook. Then people could walk all the way from here to there, and just so everybody knows, the intent would be, and horses could ride from the town of Clifton all the way to Hemlock Overlook. That's the plan that's being proposed. Mike Davis talked about it. Jim Fullerton's been looking at it for 15 years. And as I said, it would go through the 8-acre park. It would go through the creek, which horses can do. For humans, what they have to cross creeks like that is they put concrete pipes vertically into the creek and then fill them up with concrete. So you end up with what look like patio stones, and you kind of walk through the water.
Yeah, little pedestals, right?
Little pedestals. You get to the other side. Northern Virginia Regional Park does this. There are a number of these things in Hemlock. I think there's even one that goes over Bull Run like this. I'm not an expert on it, but that's what I understand. Okay. That's the idea. That's what's been discussed. So the thought I had was, would we put some funds in the budget to aid with construction of that trail? In particular, go ahead.
Didn't the CBA bring a proposal for something like this to a council meeting a couple months ago?
Mike
Davis
did. He happens to be in the CBA. It wasn't a CBA proposal, though. It was a Mike Davis proposal.
But I thought the CBA was willing to put up some funds to help make something like this happen.
They probably would be. They probably would be.
Is my memory faulty, or didn't they say one of the biggest problems was getting the permission of the people whose land you had to go over?
Sure. Also, the railroad right away.
The right-of-way issue, I think, was what they said was one of their major blocking issues.
So anyway, you've got two choices. Go north of the creek, right up against the railroad, okay? Which is what Mike Davis has proposed. Others have said that is not viable. For many reasons.
Especially with the news this year, my goodness.
And the alternative is, instead of doing that at all, don't go on the Norfolk Southern property, go on the edge of the properties that adjoin Norfolk Southern, the last 10 feet of those properties, which gets you over to the same place. So it would not be a Norfolk Southern issue, but it definitely would be a property owners. My understanding is many of the property owners are supportive conceptually. And for 20 years, there was such a trail. It's gone into disuse over the past 10 years or so. But not all the property owners are necessarily on board with it. And look, to the extent one of them is not on board, then there isn't a trail. So this is that's all notional, and it's not really our fight. If anything, the group said we don't want the town spearheading this. People don't like the town. We don't want the town involved.
Well, by all means, let's put money in the budget for it then.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm the messenger, and I was like, okay, because I thought they were going to say you guys spearheaded. It was the reverse. We were catching the spearhead instead. But as a genuinely good community member, I thought, would we, if they get all the permission to do this, would we put some money in that might help with the bollard thing?
I'm not opposed to having money, having fun. This is the kind of thing that I think local governments are supposed to do to help
Yeah.
improve the, the usability of the community. So
Mhm.
I'm not opposed to it. I just, do we have, again, same question. Do we have any idea what the cost would be and what we should potentially earmark for it? And I also would like to see if we can do any cost sharing with other organizations, whether it's the CBA or a collection of neighbors along that area or whatever.
We'd be talking about going through the 8-acre park. We already have trails, so they are
Yep.
what they are. Maybe there's incremental improvements, but I don't necessarily see much there. We're really talking about getting across Pope's Head
Hmm.
with these thingies. And I don't know what that could possibly cost. I can't imagine what people would think about spending $10,000 to put that in. That seems crazy, right? So,
We could get some large rocks probably. I mean, I don't know how deep the water is there, but it occurs to me that, yeah.
well, and I
No,
don't,
that's
is this,
the Boy Scouts are, they take that on. So I can't imagine the cost is more than, $200 a pedestal. So $1,000
Slow down, folks.
the project.
Sorry, but I have to play lawyer here.
Right.
Where's the liability? Who's liable if we put something in and then somebody slides off it?
I think you were sitting at our dinner table, Steve.
we had this discussion.
I mean, I'm not. Rather than get into more of an, I'm not opposed to it either, but rather than get into this again, as we have unfortunately with the streetscape, before delving too deeply into this, if we find out that there are some stoppers like liability or like easement that stop the whole issue prior to us getting involved,
Yeah.
it seems to me that the people who are proposing this have to come to us with a showing that those stoppers don't exist before
Yeah.
we do anything else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think,
Okay.
some feasibility work before we earmark funds in the budget for it.
Okay, so no line item in the budget at this time. Yes?
Yeah, and not until we have a more clear feasibility.
Well, next time will be a year from now.
Right.
Oh, but we can talk to these people and tell them what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
just raising this issue up as a possible line item,
All right.
making sure there's transparency on what's behind it. And then we can all say, no, I don't want a line item on that. Let's keep thinking.
Yeah, and to the extent that anybody's feelings are hurt that we don't put a line item in, we're pretty clear about when we're doing our budget and when, like we don't even really have a proposal, we have an idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and they're still working through it, and they've been talking about it for 15 years, so
what's another year?
They can continue to work through it.
Yeah.
And there are many issues to be addressed, so I get that. Okay.
This is a remedial question that I have, and so
Go ahead.
maybe it won't take long to answer, but my understanding is capital expenses are typically one-time costs for like real stuff. Like kind of a general,
They're costs for items with a certain lifetime.
Okay.
The capital items. But what's your thought?
So I did some homework on like digitizing our forms and stuff for the, whether it's town hall or park reservations or the forms that we submit, and they're one-time costs from our web supplier. There's not a recurring component. So it would essentially be, the maintenance is included. We pay one time to create the forms and the workflows, and the maintenance is included in that cost as long as we are still getting service from them. I didn't know if this should go on the capital budget or on somewhere else.
I don't know either, but are you proposing something that isn't in the budget now, but maybe you want it to be?
There's a line for it somewhere. I think we put in $2,000, but I don't think it's on the capital budget. I think it's in the annual.
Yeah, for that amount, for website maintenance and improvement, you can capitalize on it. But if it's around that amount, we wouldn't.
Yeah,
Um,
we're looking at like $1,000 max. I mean, basically either $50 if there's no payment associated to the form, $75 if there is a payment associated with the form submission. So I don't think we have
Yeah.
more than 10 forms. So I was gonna ask to put $1,000 in, but we can table it until we're at that part of the budget.
Well, there's not much left. So,
Sounds
We
good.
passed that part of the budget, I
yeah,
think.
we're past that part of the budget, but we can
Oh.
go back.
Yeah.
Before we do, let me mention streetscape. We've got items in here. I haven't heard any further. I'm okay with what's in here for now. It's not.
Until we have until we have an update
Okay.
from them, I think we have to leave it here.
Okay, there are only 2 items left. Well, there was 1 item left, and you just talked about this digitizing business.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Yeah, where is that on the budget, Nick?
Nick, there was something about, I can't remember what it was.
It was maintenance.
Website, something or other.
There it is.
Updating and configuration. Yeah, I think if we leave it at $1,000, and for my own sanity, I'm gonna spearhead this project with our web developer, Growth Media Services, to at least get the town hall reservation forms done. I think that's the biggest revenue piece that we have. And I think if we budget $1,000, that'll cover all of our committee forms as well, but town hall, town park reservations, and then any of the application fees that we have. But my plan is to spearhead this with town hall reservation workflow.
And so instead of 2,000,
Yeah, it's approved at 2.
Yes. Yeah, I think we can bring that down to 1,000. Is my
Okay,
point.
okay.
Might I suggest we bring it down to 1,500 because I know how computer costs go.
Sure.
All right,
If you
1,500.
yeah, sounds good.
1,500, but now we've got a sense of specific scope and what
Yep.
it's basically. I basically view it as 1,000 with 500 of cushion in there.
Yeah.
In case you need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, if it's 10 forms with payments attached to all 10 forms, it's $750. So I don't think we have 10 forms, and I don't think we need payment with every single form that gets submitted. So we'll come in under that, but it's good to have this approved at this amount.
Good to come in under.
And there,
Okay.
to Steve's point, there might be some unforeseen costs.
The only other thing I've got, and by the way, when I'm done with my items, if no one has any other items, my intent would be to say we're done with the budget for advertising. So if other people have other issues they want to discuss, it will be the time shortly. The only other item to discuss that I know of is the proposal that came in today for the watering of the planters, which would be a kind of a new item. I don't know if you guys saw my email, but the idea would be there are what are those things called? Barrels on Chapel Road.
By the Air Square.
By Air Square, and every year people plant flowers in them, and then they have to go out and water them by hand because I'm told there's no hose anywhere nearby, and if you don't water them, the flowers die. And when the flagpole area around the flagpole at Air Square was done, where there were some old railroad ties and some other stuff that was dug up, and now I think it's just grass around there. A proposal to dig that all up and make it into a new flower bed, and then you would need to water all the flowers in around the flagpole and in the 5 planters, whatever those things are called, barrels, the 5 barrels and the flagpole, because if you planted flowers and you didn't water them and they're not in the ground, they're actually in like a barrel, they'll dry out. So you need to water them, infeasible to bring jugs of water. So the idea would be the town would fund a large watering tank. And then people would drive down with the water tank and water the five barrels, and the little area around the flagpole. Estimated max cost maybe $8,500 per summer season, so $1,500 per barrel to do the watering. But if you don't water them, you're not going to have flowers.
Can we get some nice silk flowers, or, you know?
I mean, and look, I think part of it's people saying, look, if you don't do this, if you don't pay us to do the watering, we're not going to put flowers in at all. You're just going to have rocks or nothing there. Or maybe you'll have to put some concrete things there instead of those pretty barrels with the flowers. You can't depend on volunteers to water these. You're going to have to hire employees effectively to do the watering.
Is there no external water supply at Clifton House? Or I mean, at you know, Marcus's building or whatever, Sheldon's building? There's
Well,
there's no hose bib there?
There
Can
must
we tap
be,
into that?
Sorry?
there must be, because Phyllis told me that Marcus's people are out there watering their plants all the time.
Hello. And it's well
Apparently-
water. There's not a meter running on it.
Apparently there is, and Marcus said he would provide barrels, so he might be inclined to say, you can use my hose too. I don't know. But that's the idea. And the other thing, I know Lynn had talked about the planning commission's working through the comprehensive plan and looking at Air Square, so changing how Air Square is done and digging things up and redoing things before this comprehensive plan is done might not be a
Yeah.
thing to do.
Yeah.
Right now as well. I don't know.
I'm inclined not to put $8,500 in the budget for this. I'll say that.
I would agree, but you have to understand that if we don't, there may not be flowers there, and you may just have
Oh, man.
you may just have grass around the flagpole until
But there's a plan underway. There's a team working on a comprehensive plan that would include this. And
But
But if
it
if
sounds
it's
like
not in
they'll
the
have,
budget, if it's not in the budget right now, we wouldn't be able to execute on it until next year.
Do-
Till next
do
summer.
we think the plan and proposal is going to come together before we're planning a budget in a year?
the comprehensive plan, no,
Yeah.
that won't be done by next month, I don't think. But Lynn,
M-
is that right? The comprehensive plan won't be done by next month?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the timing on that, but
I mean, by
imagine-
next year.
if we put something in the budget for Air Square beautification, once we get more information, we can decide whether it goes to this watering plan or to buy a hose to,
Right.
tap into Bellagio.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to putting money in the budget for the beautification and maintenance of Air
Mhm.
Square.
There's
I don't
already,
think $8,500 to water flowers in some barrels is, I think.
there's already $1,000 in there, Lynn, for this exact thing. It's in there.
Do we think $1,000 is enough, or should we have a different number in there?
It seems like enough to me. You're talking about, and you need to understand, this is a number to buy flowers and plant them. Now, those flowers would have to be able to survive by being in the ground, okay? Or flowers or butterfly bushes or native plants or whatever that might be, the kinds of things that's like, we don't water the grass, obviously, in Clifton, and I don't think anybody waters the stuff around the sign, if I'm not mistaken. So coming into town at the Triangle, so somebody did a really good job on selecting whatever that stuff is, that apparently is pretty hardy, just sitting there. But there's a big difference between stuff that's in the ground, so it can draw on, versus in a planter, which is, it's like a fish in a fish tank. It's always going to be, living on the edge. Although the reverse, because they have water and these would not have water, but otherwise a very good analogy. So we've got money for planting, but we don't have money for the hire the watering service.
I-
Okay,
I'm not going to jump in front of a train if somebody, wants to make this thing happen, but I just think that's a silly amount of money to water 5 barrels.
No, I'll push you in front of the train. It's okay. I'm with you on this. I can't see spending $8,500 or anything close to it to figure out a way of having a truck come in here to put water on plants in planters. I certainly would support a little bit more money. Bill has now clarified that the money that's been put in the Air Square account is for the plants, for the flowers. I would certainly want to talk with Marcus. There's got to be a water bib there.
Yeah.
I mean, there
Come
can't not be a water bib in that whole system.
Yep.
And if we have to spend some money to put in a hose system so that we can water the plants, then we ought to do that.
We
Yeah.
did that before, and it was incredibly painful at best to navigate the system. There were 4 of us that took turns every week, and hauling it out and hauling it back in. You had to make sure that you were there when their people were there. It wasn't practical. And so I've already talked to Donna. If you guys don't want to pay somebody to do it, then remove the planters, put in more bollards so that people don't park there. That would be a more practical and permanent solution than having barrels that fall apart every couple of years or concrete planters that people back into. And again, it's an additional cost to Bellagio. It's not, why should they have to provide the water for the planters?
Well, I think there are some
they're on a
answers
well.
to that, Laura. The Bellagio gets the primary benefit because their customers then walk around and stay in that park to eat and enjoy it, and that's fine.
Mhm.
But what I don't understand is whether there are plants in those barrels or not, people are going to back into them. We're going to have that problem no matter what.
Right.
So
and now
that
you have
has
the
nothing
problem
to
of
do with
people
whether
putting
we water
cigarettes
them or
in
don't
them
water
and-
them or anything else. That
Right.
problem is going to exist unless we figure out something else, and I'm not suggesting we do.
No parking sign?
Well,
I mean, that would be a lot less expensive. But my point
They
is,
ignore
if the planters aren't going to be maintained, people put cigarette butts out in them, they'll
Yep.
catch fire.
explain to me, the planters that Marcus is offering us, are they wood or are they concrete?
They're wine barrels, or whiskey
They're wine
barrels.
barrels.
He's offered to cut them in half and drill the holes for drainage to
I see.
replace the ones that we already have. It's quite an effort.
Mhm, mhm.
And we had planned a volunteer work day whenever they come up with the redesign for the flagpole. Since you won't want to do timbers, I think the agreement was to use some type of pavers to define the flagpole, replant it as it was similar before. And anytime that you establish plants, if you guys get a new Christmas tree, you're going to have a watering contract with someone whoever plants the tree to guarantee it for at least 2 years. As Bill said, if you have the concrete planters on the pavement, they have to get watered. If you don't want to do it, then remove them and put a sign in or something like that. It's simple.
Mhm.
Laura, in the plan that you proposed, where does the big barrel live and who drives it to the flowers?
It sounds like a service.
No, the whole reason we got our golf cart was so that we could do this. We started this process like in 2018, 2019. The 35-gallon, it's a 35-gallon gravity fed tank. We just throw it on the back of the golf cart and I, could whip down there and knock it out. But it's a commitment, 3 to 5 times a week during the summer. Again, like right now, we haven't had any measurable rain in April. I don't know how many inches we're behind. It's very weather dependent. And I don't mind doing it. I love being outside, and I loved doing it before when I had people to help me. But, you know, those people have moved away. And I don't see anybody else stepping up. I can't even get anybody to help me with the Bluebird Trail. You know,
So this $8,500 that Bill mentioned is,
that was as I said in the response to Bill, that was an arbitrary number, not to exceed 10 hours a week. It probably would take an hour to an hour and a half per watering. That was just something that I set in there because I knew there would be a limit to the cost, you know, that everyone would be agreeable to. And I understand. I mean, I understand that people don't value it and don't think that there's a certain skill that goes along with it.
I'm not necessarily questioning that. I think I just had a different impression about what that, like, that we were going to contract with a company to come and water the plants, and that was going to be $8,500 a year. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I understood the math to be $35 an hour.
And that's actually less than what most water contracts would cost. If you contract with a landscaping company, or, you know, I don't know if LCS does anything like that, or if, you know, I don't know if Tommy does anything like that or not, but it's typically more. And as I explained, I know we don't have municipal water here, but typically when a landscape company has a contract,
Sure.
they have meters that they put on fire hydrants,
Yeah.
and they're charged that way for water that they use if they don't have a truck with a tank. But I'm fine if you guys don't want to have the planters. It's just that I'm tired of making the effort to do it, and I just can't do it by myself.
No, and I don't think anybody should expect you to.
Yeah, 100%.
And you know, we had a huge upgrade from milk jugs to kitty litter jugs, and you know, now we're trying to make the upgrade to a watering tank. And it makes me, it's sad when I go to other little towns like Middleburg, and I know that they're bigger and I know that they have DPW and things like that. But when you go to other little towns and they have, you know, beautiful hanging baskets or planters, or even like Reston Town Center, it would just, you know, it would just make the town that much more.
It would be nice to be able to find a place to plant flowers where we had access to water.
Yeah.
And the issue here is we don't have access to water. I
Right.
would prefer,
Can we put a pump?
not
Can we,
sure
like,
that's
we own
true.
Air Square, can we put a pump in the ground?
Oh,
$15,000. So yes, but that's very expensive.
But that's a one-time expense for $15,000. 2 years at $8,500 a
true.
year.
It's
like-
true. It would pay for itself compared to this. It's true. Because it's just expensive to have to pay, you know, hourly to go do it. It's a lot of work.
Right. But
So-
anytime, I mean, you have to pay to mow the grass. You know, there's a cost to managing and maintaining, whether it's the pink house or the caboose or anything like that. So the suggestion is, if you all don't want the planters or don't want to pay for the maintenance of the planters, then, you know, come up with something alternative. And having a volunteer-led effort to plant something every year that's going to die is not sustainable.
I agree. I agree with that. We ought to look for alternatives to the planters.
So is that part of the work that's being done on the comprehensive plan? Because it sounds like we have a challenge and a comprehensive plan is currently underway. Perhaps this is something that can be addressed as part of that plan.
Oh.
I'm not part of that effort. I'm not trying to put work on anybody's back that, you know, they're not already doing, but it's clear we have a problem, and I don't know that we have a clear solution to it.
And
So
the real issue that this raises is we got a few places there on Chapel Street, Chapel Road, where there's a fear that people will start parking there.
Mhm.
Oh, they
Meaning
do.
have to park on the sidewalk, which would be dangerous. So we
Right.
don't
Yeah.
want that. There's also on Chapel Street, people that live on Chapel Street don't want anyone parking on the side of the road where the park is.
Yeah.
And so how do you prevent that? And Phyllis and I were talking at Fairfax County Government Center. They have these little concrete thingies. They got a whole bunch of them, so nobody parks there because you can't. So that's how they solve the problem. It's not, it's a little bit Stalin-esque looking, not as beautiful and flowery, but that's the job it's doing.
Well, we could probably come up with something that's a little more attractive, potentially, than
yeah. And your question was, could the comprehensive plan look at that? Because it's an issue at several places in the town. I think what we have here is, if we really can't get water from Bellagio, like we can't run a hose from Bellagio to these planters, then we shouldn't put plants in them because we're creating our own problem.
yeah.
Different for plants that are in the ground, but plants in a planter, just creating something that we don't have the bandwidth to do. We should look at the possibility of other solutions. I don't know what those are. And maybe the comprehensive plan group could look at that, because this is an issue, not just here, but at other places in town.
Yeah. I think, I don't think it's feasible or sustainable, because, you know, if Reagan and Laura win the lottery and move away from Clifton, you know, then what happens, right? It's so, yeah, I think we need something that's a little more fully baked and sustainable. And we don't have that ready for this budget cycle.
I'll hope we can win the lottery and move away from Clifton, but necessarily happen.
I find that's a better analogy than hit by a bus, right? So.
Yeah, but if I won the lottery, I wouldn't move away from Clifton.
Right, then you wouldn't have to. You'd just be here. And good. Okay, well, I think that's where we are. I think we need to start thinking about alternatives. If we're not going to be planting flowers, then putting in those wooden barrels, they always deteriorate over time. And so that's another issue that, well, nice, probably ends up with something we'll have to address again. So it's something we should be thinking about. And given that the Planning Commission is looking at Ayr Square, this would seem like, as Daryl said, this seemed like a natural adjunct to that. Are there other things that were open from the last discussion about the budget, or that are other issues related to the budget? I didn't have any, but maybe I forgot something. I don't know.
Oh, yes, I did want to bring up some budget implications for our Title VI plan.
Okay.
In general, and both of they are the translation and interpretive services, and also advertising. In general, if they are part of the federal highway program, like official Title VI items, then they would be in the capital budget. And I think they would be rolled into the different phases like the design phase that we would budget within the design phase for these aspects of advertising and potential interpretive services. But so it might be accounted for already in the budget. Of course, it wouldn't hurt our compliance to have a line item that says Title VI advertising and translation and interpretive services. But in addition to the capital budget, we've also added into our agenda that if anybody, for any of the meetings that we're advertising, if anybody needs any interpretive services, to just contact us, and we'll make the best effort as possible to get that done. So I think in our regular budget, we also need to be accounting for translation and interpretation services.
So
Do you
you're
have any idea?
proposing,
Yeah.
you're proposing to add an item called translation and interpretive services for public meetings.
Yes.
Okay. translative and interpretive translation, interpretive services. Translation and interpretive services for public hearings. Where would we put that, Nick?
Home services?
I was just looking around myself.
Right now you were on advertising for public hearings. That seems like a decent
Yeah,
decent place, not that line item, but another item in there.
Lynn, do you have any idea what type of cost that might be? I mean, we've never had it before, but, and we've never had a request for it so far as I know, but.
Yeah, I think that's the big question. Amanda has done some research as a part of the Title VI process, and we know that a Spanish interpreter is $75 an hour. Sign language is 150, 2 hours minimum. So, you know, if we imagine if we needed to bring in a Spanish interpreter for one of our town council meetings, you know, we could probably have that accomplished for $300. 300 times the 12 town council meetings, you know, that sounds like that could be reasonable. It's unlikely, but or we could go on the high end if we think that sign language could be the you know, the top dollar figure, and that would take us that would certainly take us up to about 4,500.
Well,
that.
wait a minute.
Again,
Let's
unlikely.
remember that if we're doing this on Zoom, there is an automatic capability for captioning, which would eliminate the requirement
You're right.
for signage. And
Yeah.
and I think it also captions in Spanish.
And Nick, can you change that
Yeah.
title? Can I read it to you again?
yes, please.
Right? Translation. And you can do an ampersand if you want or whatever, okay? Interpretive services for public meetings. Okay, what's going on here? Title VI, don't put Title VI, do not write that, okay? For Title VI, this would be, and it looked like under Title VI, we have to advertise this within a 100-mile radius or something.
But it
It's
just
crazy.
depends on the impact of the project, right?
Right, but it said something like, if it impacts anyone driving, well, obviously it impacts people. I don't know what that means, but people drive through town and they're gonna come from as far as 30, 40 miles away. So I don't know, but the point is, if anyone in any of those areas speaks any language other than English, we advertise in all these languages. So I think here's the point. Title VI, there'd be all this that we'd be advertising in all these different newspapers, and we'd have all these interpreters, whole 9 yards. And Lynn said, yeah, but you could put that into the cost of the streetscape stuff because you'd be doing it as part of the Title VI streetscape project. Fair enough. Then Lynn said, but you know, for our public meetings, like now, we have always had, for the past, I don't know, at least the past 15 plus years, we've always had a thing that says, if you need an interpreter, let us know and we'll take care of it, okay? We've never had anyone ask for that, but they could. And so Lynn's saying, since they could, for this very meeting we're in right now, we should have money set aside for sign language or Spanish or something like that. And we should put money in for that, and came up with this number of $3,600 on the low end, assuming there was somebody who wanted Spanish interpreter for every one of 12 meetings. That would include budget work sessions and stuff. 3,600 3,600.
There we go.
That's what this, just so you and everyone else understands, that's what this is in case somebody calls up and says, I need an interpreter in X. At which point we'd figure out, what does that mean? I actually don't know. Somebody said I need something in Kurdistan language or something. I don't know what our obligations are. But we aim to please. And we would incur some cost for that. And we don't have a budget item. So hence this, which addresses that. When and if the issue comes up, and depending on what the language is or whatever, we'll go from there. When it comes up. Actually, I haven't looked at Fairfax County. I assume they've got people doing something there. I don't know.
Most of the videos that I've seen have like a little window with an interpreter in it or whatever. So
yeah.
I think this is a reasonable starting point.
Yeah, it has not been an issue, but now we've got it covered in case it comes up. So very good. Okay.
Anything else? Sorry, Bill. I got to do my taxes, man.
It's okay. So, what are you talking about? They're not due for what?
Yeah, another 12 hours.
Yeah, another couple of hours you got.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right. I think that takes care of the budget for purposes of advertising. So I'll make a motion to approve this budget for purposes of, as a draft for purposes of advertising for the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
I do have a question. If anything comes back, let's say from the plan, from the comprehensive plan, and we have new information, do we have an opportunity to adjust it?
Well, we'll have a public hearing where people can speak.
And we can theoretically make changes to it at that public hearing, or?
No, we have the public hearing, and then I don't know, we can't approve it at that same meeting. So yes, we can make changes to the budget
following that meeting
based on the input from the public hearing.
Right.
So yes.
Okay. I think that's great.
But remember the point of this is we go through this, we have this, the meeting we're in right now is a public meeting. We advertise this so everybody sees it. And then let's say we get no input from anybody, the public would assume that that's what we're going to approve. And if we somehow at the last minute make all these changes that don't comport with the draft and don't relate to comments that came in, I think the public would rightly say, wait a sec, that isn't what you advertised. So the whole idea of this whole effort and all the input we've gotten from so many people and all this discussion we've had is that we're proposing what we think the budget will be, subject to input at the public hearing. And look, a meteor strike or flood or whatever could certainly change this, but it would be a known demonstrable thing. So that's the idea here of this draft. Okay, with a motion and a second, and Nick's doing, I don't even know whatever's going on there, but presumably
I think he's making it into a PDF for publication.
Oh, okay, cool. And people should look at what Nick sends out and make sure it comports with what we discussed here. It should, because it's literally what we're doing right here, right now. But, never hurts to measure twice, cut once, or cut twice, measure once.
No, you had it right the first time.
Which one it is? I usually do the cut twice. Okay, but we got a motion and a second. Let's have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right, so we have a draft, and unfortunately, that means the meeting for Thursday will not come about.
Oh man,
sorry about that. So, and Amanda, you will advertise this. So I will make a motion to hold a public hearing on the budget at the May meeting. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Okay. Amanda, it's the 17th. We should be able to advertise in time for the May meeting, right?
Yes.
So,
Terrific.
yeah, get her out there and then so the idea is, my recollection, I don't know why I don't know this better, I should, but at the May meeting, we have a public hearing and then we can't approve it at that meeting. There
The
has to be
June meeting, we approve it.
passage of some time. So then at the June meeting, and the reason we're doing this now is otherwise we would be approving at the July meeting, which we have done in the past, but it means in that period, you don't have a budget, like you can't spend anything. This is not an item, but rather an informational thing. I looked at all the forms. The deadline for filing is June the 20th. That's for independent candidates not affiliated with a party, no primary, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And there are only two forms that should be filed, same as usual. One's called the Declaration of Candidacy. I will be a candidate for this office. Declaration of Candidacy, it's 1 page. I think it needs to be notarized. And the other one is qualification for candidacy,
You're
which
just
says
certifying
I
where you live. Yeah.
Residents.
and I'm eligible to vote. And that's it. Those are the only two. All
When
the
I
other
was
stuff-
when I was there, she wasn't sure if you had to do a statement of organization or something. There's another, but you can fill it out online. But I have never had to do it in the past. So if you're saying it's the same as before, then
Same as before, there's a bulletin at the state, and if you go, it's like really Byzantine, but if you go through it, eventually it says towns under 3,500, no petition. Yeah, you must fill out an economic form if you're something greater than 3,500, ergo impliedly below doesn't. So
right.
you're out on everything except those two forms. Okay. Just so everybody knows, so you got a little time, but not forever. The forms are available on the state website. If anybody has any difficulty finding them, let me know.
And there's a
great.
But if you were-
notary at the elections office where you file on Fridays before 12 p.m. usually.
Okay.
It's a retiree that still does like some volunteer hours there. She's a
Okay.
nice lady.
I mean, I've got a notary I personally like to work with that I'd rather use, but we'll see.
Hey,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
nice to have the hookup.
You've asked me to send out something to the town,
Yeah.
letting them know that there's an opportunity to file the paperwork
Sure.
to be a candidate. Do you want me to send that out?
Sure. Yeah.
The deadline, if you were like, what Daryl was talking about, that the meeting was, there was a deadline like April 20th. Was that the deadline?
April 6th, I think.
Or, okay, if you were declaring a party.
Right.
So,
And there was a
So I-
primary.
so
And
whoever's running now is running as an independent.
Clifton is no party. So
We are free of party politics in this town, aren't we, guys?
it's no party.
Folks, I should say, folks.
Yes.
We're one big party. We're the big tent party.
Yes. So we get out of all that stuff. You do not want to do that. And the election's on November 7th. It's the same as who are they electing? All the delegates, all the senators.
Sheriffs,
Yeah, everybody.
county attorneys, I think.
And us. So yeah,
Yep.
send it out there, let people know. It's open, anybody that has questions, whatever. So, yep. Okay, and that's just an announcement, if you will. Anything else? All right, well, good. We got through that. Hour and a half and we're done. So,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all right. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Great
Yeah.
work. Go team.
Phyllis.